There are struggles that people see, and then there are struggles that no one ever notices. The kind you carry quietly, the kind you learn to live with. You wake up, you function, you smile when required, you respond when spoken to, and the world assumes you are fine. But Allah knows that some battles are fought in silence. He knows the weight in your chest when the room is quiet. He knows the thoughts that visit you late at night, the questions you don't ask out loud, the fears you never explain because you don't even know how to put them into words. From a psychological perspective, this hidden struggle is often the heaviest. When pain is visible, it receives validation. When it is invisible, it becomes isolating. You start believing that because no one sees your pain, it must not matter. But in Islam, worth is not determined by visibility. Allah does not measure you by what people notice. He measures you by what you endure, what you restrain, and what you carry without turning bitter or losing faith. Allah is not distant from the inner world of a believer. He is deeply aware of your intentions, your unspoken does, your internal resistance against despair. Even the emotions you don't fully understand yourself are known to Him. Sometimes you feel overwhelmed without a clear reason. You can't explain why your heart feels heavy, why motivation comes and goes, or why you feel exhausted even when life looks stable on the outside. Allah understands that complexity. He created the human psyche, the layers of emotion, the contradictions within the heart. Nothing about your inner struggle confuses Him. Philosophically, this reminds us that being seen by Allah is more significant than being understood by people. Human understanding is limited. People interpret you through fragments, your behavior, your tone, your productivity. Allah sees the full narrative. He sees the effort behind the calm. He sees the restraint behind your silence. He sees the patience it takes to continue showing up when your heart feels tired. This awareness alone should shift how you view your struggle. You are not unseen. You are not ignored. You are fully known. There is also comfort in knowing that Allah counts even the pain you never verbalize. The Prophet taught us that even a thorn that pricks a believer is a means of expiation. So what about the emotional pain you suppress? The anxiety you manage quietly, the sadness you refuse to let define you. Every moment of endurance is recorded. Every time you choose faith over collapse, Allah knows. This is why you don't need to prove your struggle to anyone. You don't need validation to suffer correctly. You don't need permission to feel what you feel. Your relationship with Allah is not based on public performance, but private sincerity. When you whisper a dua instead of shouting it, when you hold back tears instead of displaying them, when you keep moving despite feeling empty, Allah is aware of all of it. And here is the critical point. Awareness brings responsibility. If Allah knows your struggle, then you must remember Him in that struggle. You cannot carry pain while forgetting the one who sees it. Turn inward with honesty. Speak to Allah as you are, not as you think you should be. Because the one who knows what you hide is also the one who can heal it. So when the world overlooks your pain, remember this. Being unseen by people does not mean being unseen by Allah. And being known by Allah is more than enough to keep going. One of the most difficult questions a human being asks is not asterisk, why am I suffering? Asterisk but asterisk, does this suffering even mean anything? Asterisk when pain drags on, when effort seems unrewarded, and when life feels heavier than it should, the mind begins to wonder whether the struggle is pointless. Islam confronts this thought directly and decisively. In the sight of Allah, no pain is meaningless. Nothing you endure is random, accidental, or ignored. From a psychological angle, meaning is what allows a person to survive hardship. Pain without meaning breaks people. Pain with purpose, however, can be endured, sometimes even transformed. Allah, in His wisdom, does not allow His servants to experience difficulty without embedding meaning within it, even if that meaning is not immediately visible. You may not see the benefit now, but the absence of understanding does not mean the absence of purpose. Often, We assume that ease is a sign of Allah's pleasure and hardship is a sign of His displeasure. This is a flawed assumption. Some of the most beloved servants of Allah were tested the most intensely. Hardship is not a verdict on your worth. It is a process of refinement. Just as pressure turns raw material into something strong and valuable, difficulty shapes the believer in ways comfort never can. Philosophically, this reframes suffering from being an enemy to being a teacher. Pain exposes what comfort conceals. It reveals where your dependence truly lies, what you value, what you fear, and what you still need to surrender to Allah. Many people only discover their strength, their patience, and their sincerity when life removes their sense of control. In that sense, hardship is not there to destroy you, but to show you who you are when all illusions are stripped away. There is also a subtle mercy in struggle that is often overlooked. Allah sometimes uses difficulty to protect you from things that would harm you spiritually. A door that closes painfully may have led to arrogance, heedlessness, or loss of faith. A relationship that ends may have distracted you from Allah or drained your emotional integrity. You may never fully know what Allah saved you from, but the protection is there, even if it arrives wrapped in disappointment. Another critical point is this: pain does not mean stagnation. Even when you feel stuck, something within you is changing. Your character is being shaped, your perspective widened, your heart softened or strengthened. Growth does not always feel like progress. Sometimes it feels like confusion, exhaustion, or emotional weight. But Allah measures growth differently than we do. He values what happens inside you more than what happens around you. This understanding demands a shift in behavior. Instead of asking, "When will this end?" a believer learns to ask, "What is this teaching me?" Not in a passive or defeated way, but with awareness and trust. This mindset does not deny pain, it gives it direction. It allows you to endure without becoming bitter, to struggle without losing dignity, and to wait without losing faith. And here is the reassurance that anchors everything. Allah never allows pain to outlast its purpose. When the lesson is complete, when the heart is ready, when the moment is right, relief arrives, not randomly, but precisely. So when hardship presses on you and meaning feels distant, remember this: if Allah allowed the pain, He also embedded wisdom within it. And discovering that wisdom begins the moment you stop seeing your struggle as wasted and start seeing it as shaping you into who you are meant to become. One of the quiet tests of faith is learning how to live in the space between asking and receiving. You make dua with sincerity. You repeat it with hope. You wait. And when nothing seems to change, the heart begins to question whether silence means rejection. Islam corrects this misunderstanding gently but firmly. A delay from Allah is not a dismissal. It is a deliberate act of wisdom. From a psychological perspective, human beings are wired for immediacy. We associate speed with care and delay with indifference. When relief does not come quickly, the mind fills the gap with doubt. You begin to interpret waiting as being forgotten. But Allah does not operate on emotional urgency. He operates on perfect knowledge. He sees outcomes you cannot see, consequences you cannot predict, and futures you cannot imagine. What feels late to you may be perfectly timed in the larger design of your life. Philosophically, this challenges our understanding of control. Many people think faith means trusting Allah when things go their way. In reality, trust is revealed most clearly when things do not. Waiting strips away the illusion that you are in charge and replaces it with the harder task of surrender. This surrender is not weakness, it is maturity. It is recognizing that your perspective is partial, while Allah's knowledge is complete. There are moments when Allah delays not because you are unworthy, but because you are still becoming. Sometimes what you ask for requires a version of you that does not yet exist. Your character may need strengthening, your patience deepening, or your priorities realigning. Receiving too early could harm you emotionally, spiritually, or even morally. Allah, in His mercy, prepares you before He delivers what you asked for. There are also times when Allah delays because what you want is not what you need. This is one of the most difficult truths to accept. You can want something sincerely and still be wrong about its benefit. The heart is capable of attaching itself to things that feel good but lead to harm. Allah's refusal, disguised as delay, is often protection. It may save your faith, your peace, or your future, even if it breaks your expectations in the present. Another layer of delay is growth through persistence. Allah loves when His servant keeps returning, keeps asking, keeps hoping. Repeated dua is not a sign that Allah is ignoring you. It is an invitation to build a deeper relationship. Each time you raise your hands, you affirm dependence, humility, and trust. In this way, the waiting itself becomes an act of worship. It is also important to understand that Allah answers dua in multiple forms. Sometimes He gives exactly what you ask for. Sometimes He redirects it into something better. Sometimes He withholds it and replaces it with protection from harm. And sometimes He stores the reward for the hereafter, where its value far exceeds what you imagined in this life. A delayed answer is still an answer, even if it doesn't arrive in the form you expected. This perspective demands patience, but not passivity. You continue to work, strive, and improve while trusting Allah with the outcome. You don't stop living while waiting for relief. You live responsibly, pray consistently, and trust deeply. That balance is the essence of faith. So when the silence feels long and the weight feels heavy, remember this: Allah's timing is never late, never careless, and never cruel. It is precise, intentional, and always in your ultimate best interest. There is a common assumption that closeness to Allah is felt most during moments of ease, when life is comfortable, when prayers feel light, when gratitude comes naturally. Yet experience and revelation tell us something very different. Often, Allah is closest to you when life feels most difficult, not because He enjoys seeing you struggle, but because hardship has a way of stripping away distractions and forcing the heart to turn sincerely toward Him. From a psychological perspective, comfort breeds forgetfulness. When things are going well, reliance subtly shifts from Allah to circumstance, to routine to self. We begin to trust systems, plans, and abilities more than the one who granted them. Hardship interrupts this illusion. It removes the sense of control and exposes the limits of human strength. In that moment of vulnerability, the heart becomes more receptive, more honest, and more open to connection. This is why many people describe their most spiritually intense moments during periods of pain. When the heart is broken, it speaks without pretense. Dua becomes raw, sincere, and deeply personal. You stop performing faith and start living it. Allah listens to that voice, not because you are eloquent, but because you are real. The weakness in your tone is not a flaw, it is an invitation. Philosophically, this closeness reframes suffering as a means of intimacy rather than distance. Pain narrows your focus. It forces you to confront what truly matters. In those moments, worldly noise fades, and the relationship between the servant and the Creator becomes central. You may not feel relief immediately, but you feel presence. And presence has power. It stabilizes you when answers are delayed and when outcomes remain uncertain. There is also a quiet mercy in the way Allah supports you during hardship. You may not notice it in the moment, but strength appears when you should have none. Clarity emerges after confusion. Resilience develops where fragility once lived. This is not accidental. Allah is carrying you through the trial, even when you believe you are barely surviving it. The fact that you continue to pray, continue to hope, continue to avoid despair is itself a sign of divine closeness. Hardship also teaches you how to speak to Allah properly. In ease, dua can become mechanical. In pain, it becomes essential. You speak to Allah not from habit, but from need, and Allah loves when His servant turns to Him sincerely. The Prophet taught us that Allah is shy to turn away empty hands raised in dua. When those hands tremble with desperation, the closeness is even more profound. It is important to understand that feeling close to Allah does not always mean feeling happy. Sometimes closeness feels like calm within chaos. Sometimes it feels like stability without certainty. And sometimes it feels like the ability to endure without breaking. These are all forms of mercy. Allah does not always remove the storm immediately, but He gives you the strength to stand within it. This understanding changes how you interpret hardship. Instead of seeing it as proof that Allah is distant, you begin to see it as evidence that He is shaping your heart, drawing you nearer, and teaching you dependence. You stop asking only for relief and start asking for guidance, patience, and strength. So when hardship surrounds you and ease feels far away, remember this truth. The struggle that brings you to your knees may be the very place where Allah brings your heart closest to Him, and that closeness can sustain you long after the hardship passes. At some point in life, almost everyone pauses and wonders, how am I still standing after everything I've been through? You look back at moments that should have broken you, loss, disappointment, exhaustion, emotional strain, and yet you are here. Breathing, functioning, continuing. From an Islamic perspective, this realization is not meant to inflate your ego. It is meant to humble you, because that strength did not originate from you alone. It came from Allah. Psychologically, human beings often overestimate their independent resilience. We tell ourselves that survival is proof of personal toughness. But there are moments when inner resources run out, when motivation is gone, clarity is blurred, and emotional energy is depleted. If strength were purely self-generated, many people would collapse under the weight of prolonged hardship. The fact that you didn't is evidence of support beyond yourself. Allah was sustaining you when you had nothing left to give. Islam teaches us that Allah is Al-Qawi, the source of all strength. Whatever patience you displayed, whatever restraint you exercised, whatever endurance you found in moments of weakness was granted, not manufactured. This understanding protects the believer from two dangerous extremes: arrogance during endurance and despair during difficulty. You do not become proud of your patience, and you do not lose hope when you feel weak, because you know the source remains constant even when you fluctuate. There is also a subtle mercy in how Allah distributes strength gradually. He does not give you everything at once. He gives you enough for today, enough to get through this moment, this hour, this test. If you were shown the full weight of what you would endure in the future, you might feel overwhelmed. But Allah unfolds strength in stages, allowing you to grow into it. This is why many people say, "I never thought I could handle this." Yet they do. They are not stronger than they thought. Allah carried them further than they believed possible. Philosophically, this shifts how you understand identity. You are not defined by your weakness, nor by your strength. You are defined by your reliance. True strength in Islam is not self-sufficiency. It is recognizing your need for Allah and turning to Him consistently. The strongest believer is not the one who never struggles, but the one who keeps returning to Allah despite the struggle. This reliance is also what protects the heart from bitterness. When people believe they survived purely on their own, hardship often leaves them hardened, resentful, or emotionally closed. But when you recognize Allah as the source of your endurance, struggle softens you instead of hardening you. It increases humility, it deepens gratitude, it strengthens compassion for others who are suffering silently. There is an important practical lesson here. When you feel weak, you are not failing. Weakness is not a flaw in faith. It is part of being human. What matters is where you turn in that weakness. Do you isolate yourself in self, blame, or do you turn toward Allah for renewal? Every time you choose the second option, you activate the very source of strength you need. This is why prayer matters most when you feel least capable of it. This is why remembrance is essential when motivation is low. You are not expected to be strong all the time. You are expected to seek strength from the one who never weakens. So the next time you question your endurance, remember this. The fact that you are still standing is not proof of how strong you are. It is proof of how firmly Allah has been holding you, and turning back to Him is how you continue to stand. One of the most comforting promises in Islam is that hardship is never permanent. No matter how intense, confusing, or prolonged a struggle feels, it is not meant to last forever. Relief is not an abstract concept reserved for others. It is written into the divine system. Allah Himself assures us that with hardship comes ease, and that promise is not symbolic. It is real, deliberate, and certain, even when it feels distant. From a psychological perspective, hope is what keeps the human being alive during difficulty. When a person believes pain has no end, despair begins to take root. Islam interrupts this destructive pattern by anchoring the believer in certainty. Relief may not arrive immediately, and it may not arrive in the form you expect, but it will come in a way that aligns with Allah's wisdom and your long-term good. This belief does not remove pain, but it prevents pain from defining you. There is a reason why many forms of relief only make sense in hindsight. While you are inside the struggle, your vision is narrow. You see the loss, the delay, the confusion, but Allah sees the entire timeline. He sees how this hardship will redirect you, refine you, or protect you. What feels like chaos now may later reveal itself as alignment. What feels like loss may later be recognized as mercy. Philosophically, this teaches patience that is active, not passive. Waiting in Islam is not about doing nothing. It is about maintaining integrity while time unfolds. You continue to pray even when you feel tired. You continue to do what is right even when reward feels delayed. You continue to trust even when certainty feels shaken. This kind of patience transforms waiting into worship. There is also a powerful truth about relief. It does not always remove the memory of pain, but it redefines it. When Allah lifts you from hardship, He often leaves behind wisdom. You become more aware, more grounded, more compassionate. You understand people better. You understand yourself better. And most importantly, you understand Allah's role in your life more clearly. The struggle becomes part of your story, not a scar you hide, but a chapter that explains your growth. Another important point is that relief does not always come as a dramatic change. Sometimes it arrives quietly. A shift in perspective, a calmness in the heart, acceptance where resistance once lived. These forms of ease are just as real as external solutions. Allah does not always change your circumstances immediately. Sometimes He changes how you carry them. And that internal relief can be the beginning of lasting peace. It is also essential to remember that ultimate relief is not limited to this world. Islam does not promise a life without pain, but it promises justice, balance, and reward beyond what this life can offer. Some struggles will only be fully understood in the hereafter, where every tear, every moment of patience, and every act of trust is acknowledged and compensated. This perspective does not make worldly pain insignificant, it makes it bearable. This understanding calls for a conscious response. Instead of rushing through hardship just to escape it, you learn to walk through it with awareness. You reflect, you grow, you remain connected to Allah. You do not let the struggle steal your faith or your character. So when the weight feels heavy and the end feels unclear, hold firmly to this truth. Relief is coming, understanding will follow, and one day you will look back and realize that Allah was not delaying your ease. He was preparing you to recognize it when it arrived.